"Who is there?" Adaobi asked with a panicked voice, but the person on the other side did not respond. She quickly took Uzo and hid him behind her water pot and covered him with a big cloth. Then she went outside to look who it was. There, she saw a young boy who had come to ask her for some palm oil. Relieved, she gave him what he wanted and returned into the hut. "Thank the gods it's not my husband. You can come out now, Uzo," she said. Uzo waited for a while before he left her hut. "Uzo will give me utmost pleasure, while Ejike will ensure my stability. I will just have to stop feeling guilty," she thought. In the evening, Adaobi found her way to Uzo's hut and they did it again. The more she engaged in immoral acts, the less she felt guilty. Soon, Ejike returned and narrated the success of the event to her, and she was happy for him. Ejike made love to his wife that night. Normally, she would ask for more, but she did not, and since it had been a while they made love, he was surprised. But he trusted her. In the coming days, when he tried to touch her, she would tell him that she was tired, on her period, she was sleepy, and even when she agreed, it would seem as though she was being forced, and she was just doing her wifely duties, not because she wanted it, but because he asked. When Ejike couldn't understand the change in her behavior, he called her for them to have a deep conversation. "My love, it pains me to say this, but you have changed. Since I returned from my trip, I have noticed this change in you. You are no longer as attentive as you used to be. You no longer crave me like you used to. What has gone wrong, Adaobi? I really want to know," he asked. "You are just overthinking it, my husband. There is nothing wrong. I was just tired, but I will try to balance everything soon," she assured him. Although not convinced, he believed her. Adaobi, seeing that her husband was becoming suspicious, tried to balance her marriage and her affair, which was exhausting to begin with. 2 years later, Adaobi gave birth to twins, and the children looked awfully different from their first child. People were beginning to talk, but soon stopped after a while. Some agreed that it was okay for siblings not to look alike. Adaobi was not so sure who the children belonged to because she was having a sexual relationship with 2 men. But gone are the days where she felt guilty about it. Now she was only interested in her pleasure. Shortly after the birth of the twins, things began to go south. Ejike's farms were not producing good enough crops like they used to. It was the first time anything like that had ever happened, and it got him worried. Although he was a rich man, if it continued like that, he was sure he would go back into poverty within a few years. He talked to his parents and they told him that it might be the season, the seed, or things were just meant to happen that way. They gave him words of encouragement and even prayed for him. Uzo and Adaobi were still involved in their shenanigans. She would go to Uzo's house a few times a week whenever she left the house to buy food. "You know we have to do this quickly so that I can return home to my husband. He is beginning to get suspicious of me and I can't afford to give him more reasons to doubt me," Adaobi said to Uzo inside a dimly lit hut, and in return he gave her a knowing smile. When they finished, she took the groceries home to make dinner. Sometimes Uzo would give her some of the proceeds of his farm, as one would normally give to his girlfriend, and other times he would give her money. Not long after the twins, Adaobi got pregnant again. Ejike's suspicion spiked. They barely made love, and she was getting pregnant so quickly. Does that mean she was too fertile? What could be going wrong, he asked himself. Around that time, Ejike's brother Emeka came home to talk to him. "My brother, there are some things that I have noticed about Adaobi. but I am scared to tell you. And even the villagers have been whispering about it. Some people say that they usually see her coming out of different huts, and sometimes out of the bush without anything in hand. I personally have seen her several times, and each of those times she looked like an antelope caught in headlight. Her expression held that of shock, he said. Ejike wondered what his brother was talking about. Thank you for telling me, but I will look into it, he replied. I have suspected it, but have no evidence, and whenever I ask her, she will come up with one excuse or another. I really love her, but it will not be funny when I find out she had been cheating on me, he said to himself. Later in the evening, after they had finished having their dinner, Are you cheating on me? Ejike asked. A shocked expression crossed Adobe's face, but she quickly masked it and replaced it with the facial expression of anger. What? How can you say that to me? You are my husband, and why would you think I would cheat on you? Have I given you reasons to do so? She asked him, trying to make him feel guilty for accusing her. You tell me, Adobe. The signs are written boldly on the wall. You have changed. Even you know that you have changed, he thundered. Suddenly, she began to cry fake tears. How can you accuse me? I love you, Ejike. You mean the world to me. I am disappointed that you think so low of me, she said, as she ran away crying. What has gotten into me? I made her cry, Ejike said, feeling guilty. It was never his intention to make her sad. He just wanted them to talk like two grown-up adults. He badly wanted her to assure him that she was faithful to their union. Just what Adobe wanted. She wanted him to feel bad for accusing her. For the next 2 days, she ignored him, and Ejike felt suffocated with the malice between him and his wife. He bought a set of gorgeous wrappers and used them to apologize to her. At first, she was playing hard to get, but later agreed that she had forgiven him and made him promise her never to come up with such topic again. That night, they made love, and it was like old times. Soon, she gave birth, and everything seemed pretty normal. Not long after, Ejike fell suddenly ill. All treatment, cheap and expensive, was not able to heal him. Whatever medication they gave him was like pouring water on a rock. What is wrong with me? First, my farm. Now, me. I can't even move my body. I feel so helpless, he cried. My Chi, I have always paid my dues. Please, deliver me from this bondage, he cried loudly. That night, when he slept, he dreamt of a man in a black mask in his compound. The man was carrying a big basket and was stealing eggs from the other big basket in the compound. He woke up with a gasp. What could that mean? He asked himself, deep in thought. Since Ejike became ill, Adobe felt as though he was a burden to her. She would not clean him up. She would not give him food. It got to the point where she called him a rotten vegetable. That day he cried. He had loved her, given everything he had to her. But at his time of special need, she had turned her back on him. Determined to find a solution, he talked to his father about the need to seek spiritual consultation. His father agreed and sent a message to Onunso, the best priest of their time, who lived 3 kingdoms away. And he came not long after. He poured his cowries on the ground and consulted the gods. A thief has come into this house, and he has stolen your family's happiness. Ask your wife. She knows what she had done, or perhaps knows what she is doing. I will be back tomorrow to get your reply, he said as he left the house while singing praises to the gods. This kept Ejike thinking. A thief, and it was that same thief from his dream. He waited impatiently for Adaobi to return home from the market. She often goes to the market and most times returned with almost nothing. And he wondered what she was always going to the market to do. When she returned, he begged her to sit so that they could talk. Adaobi, you know I have asked you before, and I will ask you again. Are you cheating on me? What is it that you have been up to that has changed you this way? Please tell me. I promise to forgive you, he pleaded. What are you saying? Are you waiting to hear something different? I don't know what you're talking about, she said with finality. The priest was here today, and he said something about the thief. And he told me to ask you that you know what is going on, he said. I don't believe in that rubbish. So you would rather believe a stranger than your wife? I cannot believe you, she said, with a hint of fear in her voice. All that while, Ejike observed her looking for hints, and when he saw fear in her eyes, he went further to ask her, so you don't care if the priest comes here to perform a ritual tomorrow? He asked her with a hint of mockery in his tone. Why should I be scared? Let him come. A clear conscience fears no accusation, she said as she walked out. Hey, what will I do now? She panicked as she cautiously walked towards Uzo's hut. When she got there, she saw him seated. She approached him and said, Uzo, I am in trouble. I am in deep trouble, as she explained everything to him. Why will you be scared? I have told you to kill this man so that we can finally be together, but you refused, Uzo told her. I want him gone too, but who will look after my children when he is gone? He is the main breadwinner of our family, and I just can't compromise, she said. Anyways, you have nothing to be scared about. You just have to go with the plan. By the way, those things don't work, he said, trying to make her feel better. Not long after, they made out and even made love. When the next day arrived, Adaobi was filled with confidence, but she dampened when she saw the look given to her by the priest. It was like he was looking directly into her soul. She had to cut eye contact with him. He did some rituals and she swore to have never cheated, and the priest laughed out loudly. Nothing is hidden under the sun. We will all know the truth when the time is right, he said as he left the house. Adaobi was filled with unease, and because of that, she didn't leave the house for weeks. For someone who visited the market almost daily but suddenly stopped going out, she was always moody and deep in thought. What is filled her mind? All this while, Adaobi was few months into her pregnancy, and soon it was time for delivery, and she gave birth to a very pretty baby girl. Ejike insisted that they do a traditional ritual to determine if the child was his. Adaobi panicked, but she knew it was too late to opt out, since she had sworn that she had never cheated. The ritual took place in the big river of Miriomimi. It was called a mysterious water. It only gathers in the raining season and dries up during the dry season. It was said to be the best place for matters like that, even though it could be done at any river in the village. The chief priest applied some cow fat to the umbilical cord of the child, put her in a basket, and then placed her inside the water. If the child floats, it belonged to the woman's husband. But if the child drowned, it was conceived as a result of rape or extramarital affair. All this while, Adaobi's heart was beating 10 times faster than normal. Her mother noticed her body movement as she shifted her weight from one leg to another, nervously. Why are you so worried? You are a good woman, so the child will live since she belongs to your husband. I don't even know why Ejike suspected that you were cheating, but it's okay. This ritual will prove you right. If only you knew, Mama, she said within herself. This practice had been in our kingdom since our forefathers, her mother said, but her words did nothing to calm the waves in Adobe's heart. As the child floated a small distance, Adobe's heart felt better. Maybe the child belongs to AGK, but she knew it was a little percentage that it was true, because she had slept with Uzo more times than she had ever slept with her husband over the years. Or rather, the tradition was fake, she smirked. But all her strength soon left her when the child sank. She tried to jump into the water, but she was held by some men. She shouted and cried out in pain for her child. Her mother's jaw dropped while looking at her in shock. I cannot believe it. So Adobe had been cheating on her husband. No wonder she felt so nervous. I had trust in her, but it had been shattered, her mother thought. Too shocked to speak, everyone around looked at her in disgust. She had to run away in shame to her parents' house, but their door was shut on her. She begged and begged, but no one listened. She ran to her grandmother's hut, which was deserted, to hide from the mocking stares of the villagers. She knew if she had gone to Uzo's hut, the villagers would immediately connect the missing dot. And she couldn't go to her husband's house because of the shame. She wanted him to cool down from the news. She weighed her past decisions. If only I had been more careful, she whispered to herself, instead of saying, if only I had not engaged in that affair. She did not feel regret for sleeping with Uzo, but regret for not being more careful. She ended up staying there for the next 3 weeks, and then she had built enough courage, pep-talked herself, and even practiced an apology for AGK. She went to beg AGK, but he shut her out. He didn't even want to see her. He felt betrayed and stupid. He would sit in his hut all day and just stare into distance. The signs were there, boldly written for him to see, but because of his love for her, he wished he had taken more action. Like followed her, or rather, sent someone to keep tabs on her. But then again, he trusted her not to do something so wicked to him, even though all he had done was love her. In pain, she ran to her comforter and second option, Uzo, who had also heard about the news. He held her in his arms as he asked, "Where have you been?" But she didn't reply because she was crying. "I will kill AGK. I will kill him for killing my child," Uzo swore. "Please, make me forget everything. I just want to forget." For weeks, I have been buried in pain and regret. Adobe stuttered as she cried. Uzo took her inside and gave her gourds of palm wine. They both drank until they couldn't drink anymore, and soon started removing their clothes and they made love. When they finished, Uzo could not disconnect himself from her. He tried, but they were stuck on the hips. What is going on? They both panicked. What actually happened was the ritual that was carried out in AGK's compound, where Adobe swore to have never cheated. It happened that if she was to ever sleep with another man that wasn't her husband, while her bride price had not been returned, they would get stuck to each other and would never be able to disconnect without the help of a native priest. It was later in the day that people gathered when they heard voices coming from Uzo's hut, and soon the chief priest was involved. He did a ritual with AGK's consent, and Uzo was disconnected from her. Since AGK was there to witness her shame, she knelt down to beg him, but he only looked at her with disgust, that she could barely recognize him. A face once filled with love and admiration for her had now been filled with hate, regret, and disgust. She followed him home in shame and begged him to take her back, and that she would be the best wife to him. But as soon as she stepped into the compound they once shared, Adaobi lost her mind. She started to laugh and jump up and down like a child. The charm in the front of the house was responsible for that. While Adaobi ran mad around the village, Uzo was paralyzed all over. He waited for death to claim him as he lay in his hut helplessly. Everyone had deserted him. As for the children, the priest only singled the first child to be Ejike's, and the rest were not his. As much as it pained him to let them go, he knew he could not take care of them the way they deserved. They would always remind him of their mother's betrayal. He took them to Uzo's family compound and gave them to their grandparents. And as for Ejike, he slowly regained wellness and his farms returned to their former glory. And as for Chidinma, she did not know where to find Uzo, since he was never truthful about his village. She returned back to her parents and they welcomed her with open arms. I first heard about this practice in Enugu State, Nigeria. Whenever a married woman cheats on her husband, after some rituals had been done on her, she would glue to the other partner or run mad when she returns to the house after having sexual intercourse with another man. And again, when the woman is actively cheating and still sleeping with her husband and even cooking for him with the money given to her by her boyfriend, things will begin to go wrong for him. In some cases, the man might die. Who do you think is at fault in this story? Do you think Ejike should have accepted her back into his life? Do you think her parents were right to shut her out? Few moral lessons I gathered in this story. As a woman, it is not advisable to enter into another relationship when you are fully aware you still have a soft spot, or rather, you still have feelings for your ex. Sometimes, what our hearts want is not what we actually need. Like some will say, the heart wants what it wants, but it's not always the case. Marriage is sacred and it should be treated as such. When you cheat, you disrespect the bond and everything it stands for. If you are a married woman and you are not sexually satisfied in your marriage, it's okay to relate it to your spouse, and maybe he will look for better ways to satisfy you and make you happy and fulfilled. Sex is important in every marriage, but marriage isn't all about sex. There is more to marriage than many let on. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Please don't forget to like, comment, and share. See you in the next one. Bye.